Blood freezes on iron. Not splattered, not sprayed. It stops. A single drop hangs from a god's wrist and falls slowly into the dirt, where it steams like it touched something alive. The wolf's mouth is still open, too wide, wider than it should be. Teeth like broken swords, breath hot, smelling of iron and prophecy. Gods stand frozen in a circle. Not one of them moves. No chants. Nowhere cries. No thunder shaking the sky. This is not a heroic moment. This is an execution. One god steps forward. Not the king. Not the thunderer. Not the trickster. A quiet one. He doesn't shout his name. Doesn't call for witnesses. Doesn't ask the sky to remember him. He lifts his arm and calmly places his hand inside the wolf's mouth. The jaws close. Bone snaps like dry wood. Flesh tears. Blood pours down Fenrir's tongue. But the god does not scream. He doesn't beg. Doesn't curse. Doesn't look away. He stares straight into the eyes of the monster and accepts it. That is how Tyr proves himself. Not with victory, but with loss. And here is the mystery. In a world where gods carve their names into mountains,
unveil the legends.
Before the blood, before the broken oath, before the missing hand, the gods lived in something they called peace. It wasn't peace. It was tension wrapped in gold. Asgard stood tall, shining, confident. But beneath the marble halls was paranoia. Odin ruled by knowledge stolen at any cost. He traded an eye for wisdom and never stopped paying afterward. Thor ruled with impact. Problems rose. Thor smashed them. Simple, loud, effective. Loki ruled the cracks, the jokes that went too far, the lies that felt harmless, the chaos nobody noticed until it was too late. And then there was Tyr. No throne, no hammer, no cult of followers chanting his name. Tyr was older than Thor's thunder, older than Odin's rule. Before war was glory, Tyr was law. He was the god who decided when a fight ended, who enforced oaths, who believed even enemies deserved fairness. He wasn't admired. He was respected, which is worse, because respect doesn't protect you when fear takes over. And fear was growing. It had fur and teeth. Fenrir was not born a monster. He was raised into one. The gods saw him as a cub and already hated him. Not for what he did, but for what he would do. Prophecy whispered his name. Fenrir would devour Odin. Fenrir would end the gods. So the gods watched him grow. Too fast, too strong. His laugh shook the halls. His shadow swallowed the sun. And the gods did what gods always do when fate threatens them. They tried to control it. They debated. They argued. They sharpened weapons. But Tyr saw the truth early. This wasn't a battle to win. This was a mistake trying to fix itself. The first chain was honest. Heavy iron, forged by gods, built to restrain mountains. Fenrir snapped it like a toy. The second chain was stronger, thicker, meaner. It shattered. The gods laughed less each time. Fear crept into their voices, into their plans. Fenrir noticed. He liked it. By the third attempt, the gods stopped pretending. They went to the dwarves, not for strength, for deception. They asked for something that looked harmless, and the dwarves delivered a ribbon. Soft, silent, almost invisible, magic hidden inside innocence. The gods smiled. Fenrir did not. He knew the smell of lies, so he demanded insurance. "One of you places a hand in my mouth," he said. "If this is a trick, I bite." The gods froze. Thor's hand tightened on his hammer. Odin stared at the ribbon like it was already blood-stained. Loki avoided everyone's eyes because someone had to volunteer. and everyone knew what it meant. If the gods lied, that hand was gone. This is where legends usually talk about courage. But this wasn't courage. It was inevitability. Tyr stepped forward, not because he wanted to be remembered, but because he understood something the others didn't. If no one paid the price, the lie would fail. He knelt, placed his hand between Fenrir's teeth. The ribbon wrapped tight, magic sealed. The wolf struggled, then realized betrayal. The bite came down hard. Bone, blood, silence. The myths move on quickly after the bite. They always do. They talk about how clever the ribbon was, how impossible the magic, how the wolf was finally bound. They don't stay with Tyr. They don't sit with what really happened. Because Tyr didn't just lose his hand. He lost his meaning. Up until that moment, Tyr was the god of oaths, the enforcer of law, the last word in every conflict. And in one silent decision, he broke the very thing he represented. The gods had sworn Fenrir would be freed if he could break the binding. They never intended to honor it. That makes this moment darker than any battlefield. This wasn't war. This was fraud. And Tyr knew it. He felt the lie tighten with the ribbon. He understood the future being rewritten by deceit. And still, he stayed kneeling, because someone had to make the betrayal work. Here's the theory the stories never say out loud. Tyr wasn't chosen. He volunteered because he understood the arithmetic of survival. One life for many, one hand for the world. That is not heroism. That is execution disguised as duty. And after that day, Tyr changes. He doesn't challenge Odin anymore. He doesn't lead wars. He doesn't judge disputes. He fades, because a god who breaks oaths can no longer enforce them. The silence around Tyr is not accidental. It's exile without chains. And that silence is the punishment. Ragnarök still arrives. All that blood, all that deception, delayed, not destroyed. Fenrir breaks free when the world burns. His jaws close around Odin just as prophecy promised. The gods lose. The future they feared walks straight through their defenses. And Tyr does not get a heroic death scene. No final speech. No slow-motion sacrifice. Some tellings say he fights Garm, the Hound of Hell, a mirror of Fenrir, another beast born of neglect and fear. They kill each other. No witnesses. Two monsters created by the gods, erasing each other in silence. That is Tyr's end. Not remembered because it's not glorious, because it doesn't comfort anyone. The irony cuts deeper than any blade. The god who gave up everything to protect the world dies protecting it again, unnoticed. The gods tried to cheat fate. They lied. They bound. They betrayed. And fate waited, patient. The lesson is brutal. You cannot build peace on broken promises. You can only delay the collapse. History doesn't remember the quiet ones. It remembers thunder, fire, names carved into stone. Tyr left no monuments, just a missing hand, and a question that still lingers. If doing the right thing requires becoming complicit in a lie, is it still right? Tyr never answered that question. He carried it in silence. So when people ask why the god of war never bragged, it's because he knew the truth. There was nothing to celebrate, only a debt paid in blood. Now ask yourself this. If you had been there, standing in that circle of gods, would you have stepped forward? Or would you have let the world burn cleanly, honestly, without compromise? Because the next story is about a god who chose purity over survival. He refused to lie, refused to sacrifice, refused to bend. And his decision didn't just doom himself, it doomed everyone. That story begins with a vow and ends with fire.